Golden Doves class 206, page 126. This is a rather a difficult paragraph. I'm going to read it again. I think I had it in the last class. I'm going to read it again. The idea of language comprising two autonomous yet semiologically connected systems leads directly to the nature of metaphor. So, in my father's thinking and in the thinking of the Hachamim, there is the idea of mashal and melissa, how language is used in a metaphoric way, in a way to express meaning, where the meaning is not reducible to the literal or dictionary lexical meaning of words. So you have these two systems. One is the semantic, the other is the semiotic. So you have the dictionary meaning of words. Let's say time is a thief. So the word time means whatever it means. Time. Thief is, you check up in the dictionary, a person robbing. Right? So there's the literal semiotic meaning of those words. What do those words mean as symbols? But then time is a thief contains a certain meaning which is being expressed by the speaker or by the author. So those words together, they carry a meaning. And that meaning, of course, is metaphoric and is beyond the literal meaning of the words in the sentence, time is the thief. So you have your two autonomous systems, the semiotic. What does each word mean? Just check the dictionary, you'll see the meaning of the word at any given time, at any given place. Perhaps it changes, fair enough. And then you have the other system, is the semantic system. What is the meaning that those words carry, right? And those are independent, autonomous systems, and yet they're semiologically connected because they use the same signs, the words, right? And this is what metaphor is about. Language is essentially metaphoric because the same element, the word, functions at two different levels. So any sentence is metaphoric, right? Because the same element, the word, functions at two different levels, right? I say, have a good morning. What I mean when I say have a good morning, morning is when the sun is rising from the horizon, right? So I don't mean have a good morning. Is it your morning? Is it, right? But it's a metaphor. It means you should enjoy the goodness of the morning, right? So it carries certain meaning, which is beyond, it's metaphoric. In time is a thief, it's an obvious metaphor, but even in the melissa, there's melissa where it's not an obvious metaphor, and yet the words are metaphoric, right? So language is essentially metaphoric because the same element, the word, functions at two different levels, the semiotic and the semantic. So any speech, any word, any sentence, any attempt to communicate something is ultimately a metaphor. By virtue of using the same semiological system, these levels, the semiotic, again, dictionary meaning of words, and the semantic, act like Borgian mirrors, reflecting, thereby distorting and deflecting the intention of each other. That there's always going to be, I'm always going to be thinking, what did you just say? You just said good morning, or top of the morning to you, or any other expression. That was a great baseball game, right? So baseball, that was what was greatness? The idea of greatness means a great man, a great person, a great episode in history. It was a great baseball game. You understand what that means, of course, but it's metaphoric, right? So there's like a certain distortion. I would call a person, he was a great king. King David was a great king. I say it's a great baseball game. Like nothing happened. It was just a baseball game, but it was a great baseball game, and you understand what that means, right? So you see, a meaning is distorted. The word great is distorted in the context of that was a great baseball game. Right? So there's like these mirrors back and forth, right? Metaphor then is the intention at one level, as perceived from the perspective of the other. So from the perspective of the semiotic level, you're not using the word great as it should be used, right? Oh, you're using it metaphorically. But on the other hand, from the perspective of, oh, that was a great baseball game, the semantic level, I'm looking at the semiotic level, and the word great there is not quite, that's the metaphor. I mean, in the sense that it doesn't quite capture the idea of a great game. Great game means I had a great time, I enjoyed it within the context of the game of baseball. What happened was maybe unusual or is something that will elicit or trigger a certain happiness within the fans of the winning team, right? Because language includes two independent systems, it is self-expressive and reflective. And the point of my father is, it's precisely because you have these mirrors, the semiotic, the semantic, and they're reflecting off each other, and they're affecting each other's meaning, and they're distorting each other's meaning, right? And that's what gives the ability for language to be self-expressive, right? So because you have this endless chain of mirrors back and forth, that's why language can express ideas, even ideas about language, and that's a chidush. It can be expressive about itself precisely because it comprises two distinct structures acting as mirrors reflecting one another, right? Because a mirror always distorts. It tells you something about what's being reflected. It distorts it, but you know something that you didn't know before. And then you have another mirror reflecting that mirror, right? So you're going back and forth. So you're having an endless chain of conveying information and distorting information. So language does that. So there's a certain tension between the reality and the language conveying that reality, and then therefore language can convey itself, right? The notion of an endless movement from one structure to another is superfluous when noting this mirror-like quality of language. So among the post-structuralists, there's an endless movement from one structure to another. I think it was Wittgenstein who mentions here. He talks about the game of language. No, it's not the game of language. I think he refers to structure games, like okay, Monopoly. Do not pass go, or go to jail. In Monopoly, go to jail. So go to jail in Monopoly is not like going to jail in criminal court, right? So within the context of a game, words have a certain meaning, right? So there's an endless movement from one structure, one game, to another game, to another game. So there's always going to be these, it doesn't have to be a game, obviously, right? It could be a baseball game that was a great game, right? So the idea among the post-structuralists is that there is no real meaning, that all meaning ultimately, what you have is you have a deferral of meaning until you clarify certain things, and then you have a further deferral because that clarification itself is ambiguous, and then you have a further deferral. That's Jacques Derrida. So for them, you have an endless movement from one structure to another, and therefore you don't have meaning. That's what the post-structuralists, well, they apply that for Jacques Derrida. The world itself is a text, and therefore the world itself has no meaning in that sense. The same way a text cannot be meaningful, or there's going to be this certain ambiguity in the text, and meaning is never fully conveyed, according to Jacques Derrida. Also, in the actual reality, there is no reality. That's why they have this craziness of, male is not male, or female is not female. These are all just categories, and, these are all just mental categories. And the idea of deconstruction is we'll get rid of these categories, and the hayat karashak, sadiq, everybody's like the same, ahati, al-ken amarti, sadiq verasha mechale, right? That's the post-structuralist idea, that there is no meaning, not in language, not in reality, and my father, of course, disagrees with that. Right? So that's the notion of an endless movement from one structure to another is superfluous when noting this mirror-like quality of language. So if you have the mirror-like quality of language, how language can be self-expressive, precisely because you have these two elements that play off each other, and they're both part of the same semiological system we call language. So that ability to self-reflect is what ultimately gives language the meaning. Language can convey meaning. Yeah. The problem raised by Wittgenstein and Russell. Wittgenstein obviously wasn't post-structuralist. He was before that, but he begins to raise these types of problems. And Russell, I think by Russell, it means here Bertrand Russell. Although Bertrand Russell has more of a fixed view of language and the fixed structures of language in Russell. Nevertheless, concerning the impossibility of language expressing its own structure, but they agree, both Wittgenstein and Russell agree that language cannot express its own structure. This is his cardinal point, and my father says, no, it can, because the minute you understand that all language operating at the semantic level is the mashal, and language operating at the semiotic level is also a type of mashal relative to the semantic level, so this interplay between mirrors allows language to reflect itself, because that's what language is doing. It's always reflecting itself. Maurice Blanchot referred to this problem as follows. Every language has a structure about which one can say nothing in that language. Right? Again, this is a post-structuralist. But there must be another language dealing with the structure of the first and possessing a new structure, and that's a difference, that you deferral, I mispronounced that word, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but there's a deferral of meaning, because then you'll find another language to express the syntax of the first language. Now I know something more about the first, but I don't really know the second, because the second I need something to, that which is expressing the first itself needs to be expressed in the third system of language, and then the third system will need to be expressed by a fourth, so there is ultimately only a deferral of meaning. So there's a new structure about which one cannot say anything except in the third language and so forth. So that's part of the post-structuralist idea. And that this is the basis for the neo-Marxist insanity that has enveloped humanity. Basically, the neo-Marxists have used the post-structuralist ideas of there is no ultimate meaning or fixed meaning to justify the insanity of transgender surgery for children and all the other crazy stuff that they're doing. A child can't be old enough to decide whether they want alcohol, right? But they can decide other things. Okay. The mirror-like relationship present in any two systems semiologically connected forestalls the notion that every language must... Okay, we'll stop here.